My name is Nathanial Bibby. I am the Managing Director of Bibby Consulting Group. I'm a social media marketing consultant that specialises in LinkedIn marketing specifically. I've been in digital marketing for about 20 years now. I started off getting websites to the top of Google. That became more competitive. Thing is with marketing, when things become more competitive, they become less effective, and therefore I moved on to Google AdWords. Same thing happened there. So when social media came along, I was uncomfortable like posting what I had for breakfast and trying to figure out how I was going to make money out of that. So Facebook wasn't really my thing. LinkedIn became my preference purely because it was people were on there to do business. And I found that I could generate leads quite effectively through that medium. I was working for an online marketing agency in Melbourne, brand new job, worked in real estate previous to that. And I said to my employer, what's the best leads you could possibly get in digital marketing? And he said cosmetic surgeons. Cold calling was ineffective. Door knocking was ineffective. I used LinkedIn marketing to reach out and basically say to these surgeons, I'm a specialist in online marketing for medical practitioners. It'd be interesting to have a conversation with you to see if there's an opportunity for us to help you. And out of the 10 that I contacted, 6 said, yeah, sure. 4 I ended up having a meeting with. And so I made 1 sale. We were selling websites, and this particular website was for $22,000, which was quite high for the online marketing agency I was working for. So I sent out 10 outreach the first week. Next week I sent out 20 outreach and I made 2 sales. So all of a sudden it's $44,000 worth of revenue. And so like I was delegating that to an assistant. We opened offices in every other city in Australia. We started buying digital agencies. Like we grew extremely fast. Like I said, from 8 employees to 120 within 18 months, this ASX listed group came along and wanted to buy the business. That particular deal didn't go as well as we anticipated, but to cut a long story short, I left that business with all of that LinkedIn marketing capabilities. I hadn't been paid by that company in 3 months. You can't script this stuff, but I got home and I had an eviction notice on my front door. I've quit my job because I hadn't been paid in 3 months. I had an eviction notice that I had to take care of. And as the sun's going down, what do you do when the sun goes down? You got to turn the lights on, right? Electricity bill hadn't been paid. I always joke about this when I do my talks. I say I'll do what any grown man would have done, and I called my mum and asked for help, right? And my mum did the most empowering thing that she could have possibly done for me, and she said, no, I'm not going to help you. And so I had to connect 2 extension cables together, run them down the stairwell of this apartment block into a power point, which was in the public area. And I connected the other end of those 2 extension cables to a desk lamp. And under that desk lamp, I wrote my business plan. Finished at 6 o'clock in the morning for the front cover, Bibby Consulting Group. And I hit the phones and started selling straight away. First day in business, we made $15,000. Grew from there, from strength to strength, as a first LinkedIn training and LinkedIn marketing agency in Australia. There was a business coach who helped me with a lot of my business acumen at the start. And I was in digital marketing, I was doing everything. And he said, invite your network along to this event I'm running. At the end, I'll thank you when I thank my sponsors. Nathanial, he's in online marketing. He said, and I said to him, today, instead of saying I'm in online marketing, tell them I'm in LinkedIn marketing specifically, and we'll just see what the response is like. And so there was about 100 people in the room, and I was just swamped with people after the event saying, well, how do I optimize my profile? How do I know who to connect with? How do I generate leads from LinkedIn? And this particular business coach, his name's David Guest, he said to me, he said, he came over and he whispered in my ear while I was getting all this attention from everyone. He's saying the market is telling you what it wants. And that's when I decided to niche in LinkedIn marketing. And people used to say to me at the time, they go, but is LinkedIn enough? Like, is LinkedIn enough to run a business? But if you think about it, like every time somebody's running a conference or they want a LinkedIn speaker or a LinkedIn trainer, I get the call. So it's like, there was a lot of interest, a lot of business. It wasn't hard for us to get to the top of Google. Say us, it was only me at the time. This is 5-6 years ago. I've been very fortunate that LinkedIn has just become more and more popular. I didn't know how long this would last for, and it's still just as effective. There's just a lot of people don't know what they're doing on the platform. And then the Social Media Marketing Institute now offer awards. So of course, I put my campaign into the awards ceremony, won LinkedIn Marketer of the Year, was ranked #1 out of the Asia Pacific region in terms of the top 20 LinkedIn experts. There I am at the top. If I would have stayed in just online marketing specifically, I don't think that I would have got the same level of attention. And now there's just, it's gone from where before, I would talk about LinkedIn marketing and I'd have to convince businesses to create this new budget, which they didn't have before. Whereas now it's like they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on Instagram or Facebook. They're asking me, how do we spend that money with you on LinkedIn? Yeah, sure. Well, it's changed a lot. Like LinkedIn marketing was all about, from my perspective, direct response lead generation, which basically means you optimize your profile, I connect with you, and then once we're connected, it's almost like exchanging business cards. I can then contact you to set up an appointment. Cold calling is effective 1% of the time, which means that you can set an appointment with somebody successfully one time in 100 phone calls. Whereas on LinkedIn, we're getting like 15% of the time on average across all industries, we're able to set that appointment. Now, 2 years ago, let's go back even further. 3 years ago, there was only 200 people that could post content on LinkedIn, full stop. Richard Branson, Tony Robbins, guys like this, Bill Gates. And then they thought, okay, now everyone can post content, and depending on which piece of content gets the most engagement will determine like how well it ranks in the news feed, right? Which is great. So I've started posting articles, they did really well, and then they introduced video to the platform. And so what's happened in the last couple of years is the amount of time that people spend on LinkedIn has tripled. So it's always been growing fast. Like there's 640 million members now. It's growing at 2 members every single second. But now they're spending 3 times as much time on the platform. And so I think of social media marketing in the context of mere exposure effect, which basically means like the amount of times that somebody is exposed to your brand, the more familiar your brand becomes, and therefore the more likable you are, the more trustworthy you are, and the more likely they are to do business. So like 10, 15 years ago, put that in context, if somebody sees 5 Coca-Cola billboards, they're more likely to choose Coca-Cola over Pepsi, all things being equal. Whereas now they need 25 exposures. They need more exposures because there's more marketing messages coming in. So I think of social media like, well, how do I get 25 exposures in front of my target audience so that they are more familiar, more likable, and they're more likely to trust me over the next provider? Now you can get this wrong, because if you put 25 exposures in front of somebody with a call to action in them, you're going to annoy them, right? You're going to build negative brand sentiment. And so I actually look at content marketing, I use neuroscience basically, like what brain chemical do I want people to release when they consume my content? And so you've got the positive brain chemicals, which are dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. And you've got the negative brain chemicals, which is like adrenaline and cortisol, which you create with calls to action. And what actually happens is, if you've ever watched people consuming content, they're there on their phone on like the subway or whatever, generally they're already experiencing cortisol. So you actually have to take them from one brain chemical to the other, and the only way that you can do that is through storytelling. And so that's the way I think about social media marketing. So in the past, like we'd just offer lead generation for clients, and we'd sit down, we'd optimize their profile, we'd work out a strategy to outreach to people in their target audience that would know the same people they do. Because like on Instagram, right, and on Facebook, if you've got a business page, you can't really choose who follows you. Like on Instagram, for example, it's just whoever follows you, follow you. Yeah, you can invite them, but at the end of the day, you can't choose who's in your audience. Whereas on LinkedIn, you can totally control that. You can send people connection requests. If your target audience is dentists, you send 1,000 connection requests to dentists in Sydney, for example, you'll have dentists in your target audience, in your network, and they'll be seeing your content. So it's extremely targeted. And so we can set appointments with them, but we can also then come up with a content marketing strategy. Now, if you go to most social media marketing agencies, they will curate content, which means like they've put all these keywords into Google Alerts, and if anything comes up about dentists or what in this example, then they'll share that content on social media, which is cool. It is an exposure, but it's not doing anything to build the organization's brand. So what I prefer to do is actually create content a little bit like this, where we interview the individuals, and then we ask the questions that creates engaging content, chop it all up into micro content, create images from it, text from it, and then you've got regular content that you can post that's actually from the brand that creates positive brain chemicals so that people like you, trust you, more familiar with you, and then when you send them a message, they're more likely to do business with you. You know, like if when I used to get a lead, like it used to be like, you know, who is this again? What's your name? Where are you calling from? Now it's like, who is this again? I'm like, Nathaniel. Oh, Nathaniel. Oh, I've been watching your videos, man. Like they like you already. They already trust you more than the next brand. You're already familiar with them. They think that you know them, you know? So the impact's huge.
Yeah, very quickly, could we take this back to when you were talking about the specific timing? So, it's like, so the idea of like building, like essentially building a database, but like, can we talk about like something along the lines of, you know, the power of LinkedIn lies in how you can curate your target audience, unlike any other social media, than everything you just said.
First of all, right, a lot of people will say things to me like, LinkedIn is all salespeople and recruiters, the content on LinkedIn is rubbish. And if you get onto LinkedIn and you've got all these connection requests and you sit there and you press accept, and you may even reject a couple, you're not being proactive, you're being reactive, right? You're not controlling who's in your network. At the end of the day, if you do LinkedIn like that, which was what most people do because they don't know it any better, is you're being reactive. So you're not going to decide who's in your network, it's whoever sends you a connection request and you decide to accept. And now who do you think is going to send you a connection request? It's going to be salespeople and recruiters, right? So of course you're going to see what sort of content do you expect to see on LinkedIn. It's nothing to do with the quality of LinkedIn as a platform, it's to do with the quality of your network. And so you want to be proactive with who's in your network. Stop accepting connection requests from salespeople and recruiters and start connecting with people in your target audience, and you'll have a very different experience. All of a sudden, all the people that see your content will be in your target audience. All of the content that you see will be from your target audience. So not only when you post content, do they get a positive brain chemical experience in their head, but also like if you see their content and they've only got 3 likes, what do you think they're going to experience when you like and comment on their content? That's going to be a hit of dopamine for them. They will like you more if you comment on their content when no one else is, right? But you're not even seeing their content if you're being reactive on LinkedIn. So I think it's easy to get like lost in the vanity metrics, right? Because there's a scoreboard on social media. How many followers do you have? How many people like your content? How many people comment? And so because there's a scoreboard, people get lost and they get distracted and they start chasing these vanity metrics, which mean nothing. Because like if you have 5,000 followers on LinkedIn and you get 100 likes a post and you have 50 comments, that absolutely means nothing for your business. Like it doesn't mean anything. So if you have the real relationships with people that are in your potential customers, that means something. If you use social media to curate those relationships, then social media is working for you. But otherwise, there's not much point to it. But social media creates conversations. You want to make sure that they're the right types of conversations, first of all, and then those conversations should create business relationships, and business relationships create sales and grow businesses. That's the way you've got to think about it. Well, most people are impatient. So they go from social media creates sales, and that doesn't work. You've got to have the conversations and the relationship bit in between. And the other thing is people are selfish, right? So you've got people that are impatient and people are selfish. This is the way human beings are. I'm like that as well. It's a big hurdle to get over on social media to not be selfish. Because if you are selfish, you're going to put a call to action in front of people and you won't get those 25 positive exposures. You've got to add value, you know? And people are like, what do you mean add value? I'm on social media to make money. What do you mean add value and not ask for anything? That doesn't make any sense. How much money are you making off social media? All the wrong questions to ask. If you add value, you will build positive brand sentiment. People will like you and trust you and more likely to do business with you. You just got to make sure they're the right type of people.
Cool.
Do I go off track a bit then?
There's definitely nuggets in there. Yeah, okay, well, how about, let's take this to an example that you've done before.
Sure.
Can you think of any, like, one that you think were specifically impressive or...
Well, I think it's really fun when I get to work with a client that's literally got like no experience on LinkedIn whatsoever and maybe got like 100 connections, because you can really notice a difference. So all of a sudden, like, there's an example of a client who's in performance in organizational change, performance improvement, business process improvement, that kind of thing. But their clients are like the mining companies, right? And so there's a lot of decision makers. On LinkedIn, I like to go from the top down. So we target the CEOs and then they can influence the transformation agents and change management guys and all that sort of stuff. And so we start growing the audience for him. So we're sending out 400 connection requests a month to these guys, and they're very receptive, and they start seeing his content that we've helped him develop, and we start setting appointments with him. So he's doing like 20-30 appointments a month on the telephone with CEOs of mining companies. And the interesting thing is, like, when you look at his news feed, it's like all CEOs of mining companies, CEO of Rio Tinto, et cetera, that are posting content. And how much engagement are they getting? Like literally like 15 likes No, zero comments. And so all of a sudden he jumps in and starts like posting meaningful comments because his newsfeed's got all of his target audience in there. He starts creating like these positive brain chemicals with these guys. When he speaks to them on the telephone, they already like him. They already trust him, you know? When I was growing up watching my dad catch 80 flights a year to entertain clients, like he was spending all this time and money taking them out, trying to create likability and trust. Whereas now you can do it on social media if you use it effectively. Whereas most people, because they're impatient and they're selfish, are focusing on their vanity metrics. They're like, I've got 50,000 followers on LinkedIn, what do I need you for, right? But they could quite possibly have 50,000 followers and not be creating any positive brand sentiment with their audience whatsoever, you know, very easily.
Can we talk a little bit about what is the strategy behind making, you know, good content? What makes content good? What makes it valuable?
People ask me, you know, what creates good quality content on social media? This applies to all social media platforms, not just LinkedIn. What most companies do is they sit in a room with a couple of their marketing guys or a couple of people from the board, and they get the whiteboard out and they go, okay, what's our content marketing strategy? And they start mapping out content pillars and stuff like that. They haven't taken into consideration what their audience wants at all. The people that should be designing your content marketing strategy should be your audience. So you need to find out from them, first of all, what are their problems, what are their frustrations, what content will add value to their lives? And then you'll get a basic framework of the sort of content you can deliver. And then once you start posting that content, the key is to monitor the engagement. And so monitor like what they're saying about the content. It drives me crazy when I see somebody posting content and they may not be getting like more than 3 or 4 comments per post, but those 3 or 4 comments are not responded to. They've just left them there. They don't realize those 3 or 4 comments are the key to their social media marketing strategy. Like having conversations with those people and finding out exactly what it is that they're commenting about and what it is that they care about is the key to creating good content. And so they're missing out on the opportunity, and they'll never grow past 3 or 4 comments because of that. Because what do you need 10,000 followers for if you're just going to have 10,000 people that you're going to ignore? That's basically what's going to happen, you know. So if you're getting a few comments, you need to be responding to them, finding out what it is that they care about to create more engaging content. That's the key to going viral, so to speak, on social media. Some of the people in the audience might be familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk's he's become a celebrity out of social media marketing, right? But he's done it by posting so regularly and monitoring the community engagement so closely that he knows exactly what his community wants to hear from him. You know, so he started off talking about business. Now he talks about self-awareness and like caring what other people think of you and stuff like that. Because when it comes down to it, when you monitor the engagement close enough, he's worked out the reason why people aren't posting is because they care what other people think about them. And so when he starts creating content, it hits the mark spot on because that's what people care about. And then they've commented more and he's made his content even more targeted. And before you know it, he's like literally become a celebrity out of content marketing because he knows exactly what his community are interested in. And that's the key to social media marketing.
If you had to like make let's say like 3 points, 4 points, 5 points, doesn't have to be specific, but short, sharp, how do you use LinkedIn? What is it for? How does it operate?
So LinkedIn is the social media website for business professionals. And so you can use LinkedIn to build your brand. It's basically the cornerstone of your professional brand, right? It's a way to communicate to the professional world. And like the most interesting thing to me is when people Google your name. And most people have done this by now. They've Googled their own name to see what comes up. The Google test, they call it. And more often than not, what you see at the top of search results is a LinkedIn profile. And more often than not, when you go to that LinkedIn profile, it's a version of that person's CV. Now, if they're in a client-facing role, which means they're looking to get more customers through LinkedIn, one of the most boring pieces of content you could possibly provide somebody is their CV. I always ask people, have you ever walked into a shop and bought something because someone's handed you their resume, right? So you need to set it up so it's customer-centric, right? So that it talks about the value you provide to the customer. It's really important. So in the first couple of sentences on your LinkedIn profile, it should tell people what you do, you know, and why. people will connect with why you do what you do more than they will with what. Because like if you just tell people, I'm an accountant, I help people with their accounting problems, what separates you from the next person? Whereas if you say, I'm passionate about helping people obtain financial freedom so they can spend more time with their families or whatever it may be, all of a sudden you've created that like little bit of oxytocin that says, okay, I trust you, you're human, therefore I'm going to keep reading. Whereas, yeah, I think that otherwise you just blend in with the crowd and people are like, well, why should I pay attention? So the other thing is, LinkedIn is used as a search engine. So if I was looking, let's use the example of an accountant, for an accountant, I could go on Google and I'll see all the ads and the promotions and stuff. It's very impersonal. Whereas if I look on LinkedIn, I'll see people in my immediate network. And so optimizing your profile becomes important, because if you are in my network and you're an accountant, I might have 20 people in my network that are accountants, but your profile is optimized, then you're going to show up at the top. And so you're the one that's likely to get the call in that scenario. I know I haven't given you 2 or 3 short sentences.
Let's change tack.
Okay.
What do you mean by optimize?
So optimize doesn't, first of all, it means rank at the top of search results, but it also means converts visitors to your profile into inquiries, and it also means stand out from the crowd. So standing out from the competition.
And how do you actually optimize yourself? And if you can explain this different for individuals versus organizations, that would be good as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got an 18-step process that we use to optimize a profile. So it starts with, what do you think the most important part of your profile is, right? It's a photograph. First of all, you need to have a professional photograph. It amazes me that people don't bother doing this. Make sure it's public. If it's not visible, Google can't see it. Your headline's really important. And so most people will have like their job title, because it's like a CV, right? So account director or business development manager or even CEO, which doesn't actually communicate what you do. And so I would be thinking about what keywords are relevant to your target audience. And then your about section. Like a lot of people don't even have the about section, which used to be called the summary, which is the bit of text below your picture and below your headline. If anyone's going to read anything on your profile, they're going to read that part. And you want to write in first person. A lot of people write theirs in third person. And I ask them why, and they say, oh, you know, like I don't want to seem like a show off. I'm trying to use words. No, I'm not trying not to use swear words. So try not to seem like a show off, but it has the opposite effect. Or it just seems like you're not behind your profile and your assistant is, and why would I contact you or connect with you if that's the case? You know. What was the question?
That was step number 3.
Yeah, we don't have to do it every.
15 to go.
No, I would try and if we can try and.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. Try and like reduce that a little bit. Like if someone literally just came up to you and was just like, how do I optimize my LinkedIn account? And you had literally 10 seconds to tell them.
Yeah, you have to get yourself an 18-step checklist. Look, so put keywords in your profile, make sure that it stands out from the crowd by, you know, putting recommendations on there and media links and stuff like that, and just telling people what to do next, like having a conversion objective, you know? So very similar to a website. Yeah.
Cool.
That's as close as you'll get to 10 seconds.
Yeah, no, fair. What else are we missing? What have we like addressed about LinkedIn?
What haven't I asked you yet?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know more about LinkedIn marketing than I do.
So social proof is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this huge herd mentality online, and that's the reason why, like, if you go to an Instagram account, right, the first place somebody's eyes go, whether they admit it or not, is to how many followers there are. Because since like primary school, we've just followed the crowd. And so the same rules apply on LinkedIn. It's exactly like TripAdvisor, you know? Like I used to go on holiday and I used to like try to work out where to go for a meal. You walk down the main strip and there'd be a restaurant, it'd be full of people. There'd be a restaurant on the other side that had no one in there. And so which one's gonna have better food, right? It's one full of people. So the people are doing the same thing with your professional brand. So if you're ever thinking about how many recommendations should I have on my LinkedIn profile or how many endorsements should I have, more than your competitors, basically. Because you want to be that restaurant that's full of people. You don't want to be that restaurant that's empty. Because it's just going to be, you have such a harder job convincing people to do business with you. And so like the number of connections becomes important. You can't see after you get over 500 connections, how many contacts people have. So you just want to get over 500, so it says 500 plus. You know, you don't want to be the guy that's got 37 connections. You could be like, you know, you could be one of the richest people on the planet, but if you've only got 37 connections, you're going to have a job connecting with people, because people want to follow the herd. And so having 5 recommendations might be enough if your competitors have only got 1 or 2, because it's not that easy. Like, you got to actually log in and submit the recommendation, you know, yourself. And so what most people just don't bother, because most people are lazy, impatient, and selfish.
Cool. We might just. How long did we put for? 20 minutes. Well, probably too much more. How do you start when you're talking with a client about helping them actually identify their audience? Like, everyone.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
Yeah, because people like to use basic terms about like demographics, things along those lines. But that's obviously not the answer. So. Yeah.
Well, look, most businesses don't know who their audience is. You know, like financial advisors are a great example. Like, I say to them, who's your target market? And they say, oh, anyone with money, right? And so I'm like, okay, that's the first thing we need to change, because what's going to make you stand out from the crowd when you're contacting somebody? And so like a great example of a niche for a financial advisor would be dentists, right? What if you became like the specialist in financial advice for dentists? When you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and it says on your profile, I'm the specialist for dentists, and all of a sudden you've got like 100 or 200 connections in common who are also dentists, and they say, hey, I'm a specialist in that area that you're in. I'd love to find more about what you're doing. They're going to be curious enough to like respond to you. I mean, not everyone will, but if you get 3 in 10 people say yes, that's a pretty good conversion rate. And so all of a sudden you're actually getting better results because you niche down. You know, I think that's really valuable. And so I help businesses, a lot of the time I help them define their target audience. And a lot of businesses are nervous to do it, because in a traditional sense, like, the more people you serve, the more likely you are to get business. Whereas on social media, it does not work like that. It's the opposite. I'd never forget this, but 10 years ago, there was a vegan bodybuilding trainer dude from Tasmania. He's vegan, right? He helps people. He's a personal trainer from Tasmania. And I remember saying to him, I said, that won't work. And I bet you, if he stuck at what he was doing, he'd be a millionaire now, easy. Because that's exactly the sort of business that would crush it on social media. In traditional marketing, if you want more customers, you go broad, you serve more people. That doesn't work on social media. And social media, you go niche, therefore you're more relevant. It's all about relevancy on social media. If you're more relevant, you're going to show up to more customers. And like the news feed on LinkedIn is a great example. Like, it doesn't work on recency, it works on relevancy. So if you want to get more exposure on social media, be more targeted, be more niche, be more relevant. Don't post, like, posting more is only valuable because you learn quicker. It's not valuable because people think, oh, you're going to show up at the newsfeed all the time because you're more, that's not how it works. It doesn't work on recency. You have to click from relevancy to recency and change the way the newsfeed looks in order for it to show up that way. And so relevancy is everything. And what happens is the algorithm will learn over time that you cater for a certain type of niche. That's why if you're using hashtags, for example, you want to keep using the same hashtags. You don't want to be switching it up all the time. And being specific as content marketing or SEO or LinkedIn marketing. Don't just put marketing, you know, it's not specific enough. And be consistent with it. I'm not saying put content marketing, then tomorrow put an SEO. Like, you're not going to capture more people like that. You want to be specific and go niche.
Cool, thank you. That's good.